Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Salesforce Partner Connect. And we have the pleasure of having a veteran of the industry, Corey Kleinbauer. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Alan.
No, it's great to have you. I know we were chatting offline, but why don't we bring the audience up to speed? I know this is not your first rodeo. You've been in different ISVs and in the ecosystem. So why don't you walk us through the journey of how you started and where you are at today?
Absolutely. Well, I've been in technology and technology sales for a very long time, but not to bring everyone back to ancient history. My current work really started in the Salesforce ecosystem about 4 or 5 years ago. So I took an opportunity to build an organization, taking over for the founder. And it was a Salesforce ISV, a native solution. And that was something that I wasn't used to, although, of course, I've been building sales teams at large and small companies for a long time. I've been a former founder, and I saw the opportunity to take on responsibility for revenue growth from a founder as being very unique. And it was a very trusted and proven solution, but never really had that focused go-to-market and execution kind of oversight to it. So it seemed like after building things for such a long time, and currently at that point, I was at a $3 billion plus company. It was going well, had a very good time there, but wanted to try to build something kind of earlier stage again. So got engaged with them, and kind of my eyes were open to the strength of the ecosystem. I mean, it's the most amazing go-to-market in a box machine I've ever seen. When you look at what's available in the ecosystem, not only thousands of users and thousands of sellers in the Salesforce ecosystem, but also these SIs and ISVs that also persist in here. And I thought, my goodness, this is a tremendous opportunity to really grow the company in a way that has, maintainable and low CAC, customer acquisition costs, and set about really creating that kind of motion to embrace the ecosystem, to talk about what it really is to be native, not just integrated. And the advantages are so strong and so apparent that 3 years later, I had an opportunity to kind of do what I felt like doing. And I was getting some calls from some ISVs on the platform, native solutions. And although I wasn't pursuing at that time one full-time job, I definitely took some engagements to help founders grow companies. And I started my own fractional revenue leadership service explicitly focused on Salesforce ISV.
Love it. No, that's a great journey. So, as a fractional CRO, how do you help founders align with you mentioned like being Salesforce, most likely being Salesforce native, align with the product strategy of where the Salesforce ecosystem is going with like Agentforce, things like that. Maybe give them a tool to have repeatable, predictable go-to-market motions. So how do you partner with founders to be that fractional CRO for them?
Well, it's really such a huge opportunity to work with a founder, because founders are typically experts in a domain, or what they call a technical expert. They've got a competency around a business function, and they had the wise idea one day to begin a software company, answering the problems of the industry they come from, which means most of them are people with hard skills. They're accountants, they're professional services people, they are folks that come from the ERP world, which is to say that they have never really managed a sales team. And what you see in a lot of successful founder organizations, now when I say successful, I mean folks that have found product market fit. They've got validation from the market that their product is good. They've got paying customers. Those are the folks I want to talk to. And they face the issue of scale. So a lot of ISVs will come in and they'll start executing, and their product works, and they'll enhance it, and they'll get some customers, and they'll get to a certain point of revenue. And that's about where I come in. So the need to inflect to the next level of performance requires some domain experience and in some miles traveled in how to create a sales team and how to create a whole go-to-market motion, which is not in their pedigree. Okay, so the zeal of a founder, just by sheer will and just hard work, they can get a company to a certain point and get those customers and talk about their product forever to potential customers. But there is a limit. And sometimes I see founders that have hired some salespeople, or they've hired a couple people here and there. And there's comp plans, there's pipeline reviews, and there's also training and enablement, and also just trying to keep them up to speed on, what the market's doing and how to the salespeople might come to you with proper discovery knowledge, but they probably don't know a lot about as much as the founder knows. So trying to take the zeal of the founder and put that into a sales team that uses repeatable, processes is a big challenge. And that's why I come in. A lot of my founders don't need a full-time CRO. They might not be able to afford a full-time CRO.
Right.
So 10, 12, 15 hours a week is really what's needed to get the revenue engine moving in a repeatable way.
Love it. So when you step into a company like mission control or accounting seat, what are the most important outcomes or metrics or KPIs that you expect their sales team, marketing team to have? Like how do you help them go from where they are today to that next level you mentioned?
Sure. So every plan is tailored and every plan, has to be flexible, which is to say every plan is different. Excuse me. But the first thing I want to look at is I want to learn about where the business comes from today. So sometimes a founder may have made an investment in a person who's a marketer. And I think we all know that the way to attract customers these days has completely changed. I mean, even SEO has turned upside down. Although I'm not a marketer, I do know that a lot of the traditional methods are being tested and challenged right now for going out to generate demand, for example. And I'll come back to the ecosystem. So the ecosystem, again, that provides such a with all these customers and all these partners that are out there and all these Salesforce sellers that you get to talk to and get access to and show them how you can make their world and their revenue performance better by aligning with your product. So in many cases, when I find out where the business is coming from, we kind of look at deal cycles and how long it takes to close from certain sorts of lead origination points. You might find after analysis that deals that come from SI partners close quicker and for a larger ACV. And there's a reason for that. We don't have to talk about that, but you could imagine what those are as compared to a lead that comes from a natural search. So it's really important to understand where you're going to place your bets because you can't do all of it. No one can do all of it. And so we want to make sure that we know where the business is coming from. The other thing that I see a lot is that founders don't have a lead problem. They have an execution conversion problem. So the first things I try to do is ascertain what the close rate is after a certain stage. So after we get past discovery, what is our close rate? So perhaps really what we need is a lot more process rigor to bring the close rate from 15% to 36%, which sounds like a impossibility, but it's very possible when you have someone who's been doing that their whole career. So sometimes it's not a question of adding more to the pipe, it's a question of closing more. And then lastly, what do we do with our installed customers? Do we have an active outbound motion to retain and expand those customers? These are people who like it. These are people who invested with us. We've implemented, they're successful. How close are we to what they're using within the product? How many users which they purchased are actually in the system? I mean, these are really important things. If we have use cases for expanded usage of our product, we can sell additional seats. This is all one seamless kind of garment of like good revenue creation. And some ISVs are further down that path of maturity than others. And the question for me is always to meet them where they're at, right? So we make it attainable and repeatable and build better skills over time and start moving towards where they really want to be, which is, solid double-digit year-over-year growth, constantly lowering CAC, vibrant ecosystem presence. Those are the kind of outcomes you want to drive. It's just a question of where our starting point is.
Got it. Can you maybe elaborate more on some of the challenges you see ISVs when they try to scale their revenue and the whole dynamic with the Salesforce App Exchange, how to use it as a channel, how to use also Salesforce as a channel, which it could be a double-edged sword that sometimes it could be competitive because some ISVs sell competing products to Salesforce, but maybe specialize in an industry. There are other cases like accounting seat that they don't really compete because Salesforce doesn't offer like an ERP or accounting, so it's more complementary. What are the most common challenges you see ISV when they try to scale the revenue engine?
Sure. So you really have to understand how you fit within the ecosystem. And there are techniques and approaches that people can speak in more detail about how to optimize the app exchange than I can. I mean, that's quite frankly squarely a marketing role. But when it comes to the actual selling, convincing people to get behind your product, recommend it to their customers, you really need to understand what it is about your product that extends the value or fills a competitive gap with Salesforce as they go out and find new logos. So there's for example, I'm with Africa Mission Control. It's the best PSA, I think, on the market, certainly a native solution. And what that's doing is it's filling a critical gap for the Salesforce seller. when they go to market and they try to win new logo, they might be against a company that does have some sort of project management utility. Okay. Now they have to answer for that when they're in that bake-off scenario. So they need to bring forward from the jump a kind of complete circle. And it does not mean that you have some company that, quote, integrates with Salesforce. When said quickly, integrate sounds a lot like native, but it's not, as you well know, right? So it's important that we partner with our Salesforce sellers to impart an understanding as to what gap we fill. Okay. And that could be accounting, that could be PSA, it could be a lot of things. ERP is another one that there is just a gap in that revenue life cycle. And some companies out there that they compete with have answered that gap to varying degrees of effectiveness. So we complete that circle, and the SEs at Salesforce typically will pick up on this, and a lot of the AEs will too. So you're really talking about the AEs, the SEs, even the customer retention folks, the CSMs that are out there that want to keep that entire revenue life cycle within the platform. That right there, I think, is one of the most critical components. And knowing where you fit in, now you complete that circle, and then telling that story is incredibly critical. We have to nail that.
Awesome. I like that. Let me now put the hat of the SI and how SIs plays with ISVs. How do you partner, or how do you advise your companies to partner with SIs? Many times these ISVs, they are a software company, they're not professional services, so they want to sell the software. They might not have enough capacity to implement. Many partner with SIs, but these SIs might not have the go-to-market motions or a robust pipeline to send leads back to the ISVs. What do you think is the role between ISVs and SIs? What's a good dynamic? What do you advise on both ends of the spectrum here?
Absolutely. It's complex, but it's very human driven. It's very humanistic. So there's not one size fits all that I can tell you that is the way we're going to do this, but it's really important to understand that anyone you're talking to where there's a partnership being discussed, you really have to have an understanding as to how you can make their business better, whether it's having them retire quota or enhance their business outcomes for the year. So really have a understanding of what it means to your partner financially to be associated with your ISV. Okay. So the most obvious thing that you can think of, some people talk about referral fees and some people take those, but that to me is not really the crux of any sort of value proposition between ISV and SI. What it really is a little bit about what I just talked about, which is if you are to become, I don't know, conversant or fluent or completely certified and competent in our ISV solution, you in turn have a really compelling story to tell your customer to expand your usage. But another thing that I think is really key within that is that let's say you are bringing to market and partnering with a ISV like Aprika or an accounting seat. What does that do for your SI practice? Well, what that does is if those two solutions, for example, and ERP in budgeting software, put you squarely in the CFO's office. You are now bringing the financial performance data of the company on the platform. And that entails or would elicit a lot of great reporting work. And when you talk about agents, and you talk about the usefulness and the practicality of agents, I believe that agents and reporting and dashboards, and I know we don't use those two last words all that much, but they're still important. What report isn't financially oriented? So if you have the financials of billing and all your utilization on platform, then you've just unlocked access to a whole another part of the company. You're not just tending to the CRM, you're tending to the entire operations of the company. I think it's a very compelling proposition for an SI. And then, of course, you have some ISVs that do have enormous services loads that come with it. The drag can be really big, but again, the bigger the drag, the less likelihood that SI can just take up that product and start implementing it. The SIs that I see that are most successful, the relationships that I see that are most successful is when the product is kind of meant to operate somewhat out of the box. And of course, there's additional configuration that can happen. So although, it's tough to get the attention of the big intergalactic SIs on the planet when your product does not have a big drag of services,
Yeah.
it is very appealing, I think, to a lot of forward-thinking SIs who are like, well, wait a second, if I'm good at this, I know that everyone has a QuickBooks or a Monday, and I know they're not happy with that. And I know that we can get them on platform and for the same approximate cost, give them an infinitely better experience. I, as an SI, I want to advocate for that, right? And there should be a person like me at every single ISV that is eager to talk to you about how we can expand your business. Doesn't have to be any elaborate program. There are some companies that are extraordinarily good, ISVs, extraordinarily good at welcoming partners in and enabling them, and some that aren't. But it's really about conversation. Let's talk about what competencies you have, what clouds you work with, what is your organization like, and let's see if we can find a way to go to market together. But the last thing I'll say here is it should never be a situation where I have my hand out as an ISV saying, give me some business. That doesn't really go anywhere. You've got
Yeah.
to jointly go to market.
Yeah, that's usually the biggest mistake I see. And I see it a lot even with Salesforce. Salesforce used to be about how they can partner with SIs, and now they are flipping things around and say, how can you sell me leads over, right? And you have Salesforce, a $40 billion machine that has marketing and AEs and this infrastructure that is asking these small size to bring them leads. And I see the same mistake that some ISVs make, that instead of, to your point, figuring out how they can build relationships, how they can enable partners, how can they build those two-way streets, all they say, oh, if you want to have a relationship with me, until you send me leads over, I'm not talking to you. So it's
Right.
definitely a
Yeah.
interesting dynamic.
It's natural. What I take that as is the conversation hasn't evolved for far enough, right? We just haven't spent the time to get to know each other and how we can help each other. I think it's easy to devolve into give me leads. And yes, I've had plenty of SIs say, I want to implement your product. Well, that's nice. That's great. But let's talk about how and why you would be doing this. Let's talk about your market. Let's talk about how we go to market together. Let's build something that is definable before we just kind of devolve into, I want to take over your implementations. That's transparent and that's not really scalable in my mind.
Yeah. And I know we're almost on time here, but in terms of the future of the ISV ecosystem and Agentforce AI, how things are converging, diverging, where do you see the future of ISVs in the next 5 years? With, on one side, you have this narrative of AI is going to kill SaaS, or agents are going to kill any ISV or software product because you're not going to need an interface. What's your take on that, and where do you see the ISVs evolving in the next 3 to 5 years?
It's a great topic, a big question, and whatever answer I give, half your audience will say that I'm wrong, and that's okay. Because I don't think anyone truly knows. I think that with there's two ways I can look at this. Number one, I have a daughter who's a very, very gifted painter, artist. And, how do you think an artist thinks about AI? Well, okay. Well, one can say I can create art on my computer. Yes, you can. Now, maybe there'll be a market someday that says this was painted by a human, this was created by AI. And maybe there's a division there. I don't know, but maybe that is somehow related to how software is curated and brought to market. But I do think that until those differentiators make themselves known in the public market, smaller firms that are primarily operating on Salesforce, for example, and I say smaller firms, I mean not the multi-billion-dollar ginormous companies who have built these massive organizations and huge renewal streams, the more nimble, lean organizations have a better chance of embracing AI and keeping up with this change that's coming than the massive companies who can roll out great commercials and do these kind of things like we're embracing AI. Now, I do believe that Salesforce ISVs have an advantage here because Salesforce has been a clear leader in the agentification of workflows. And I think that is a great mothership, so to speak, to be associated with. So you can follow their lead, you can continue to invent, but I don't think that you're ever going to get to the end of their curiosity in terms of how your product is embracing AI. I would just say be ready for anything because, can someone create an agent to do your accounting? Well, maybe that will come, but there's a lot of history around the invention of certain technologies that were meant to disrupt and displace thousands of millions of workers that just changed the value of what they deliver. It just changed how they deliver it. And I think that as far as SIs go, there'll always be a need for someone to orchestrate towards a specific business outcome. All these assets, be it the AI, 100% agent driven, or professionally finished software by humans or partially by humans, I think there'll always be a need to orchestrate these things, just like an ISV, especially that we talked about at the beginning, someone who has deep domain experience that knows an industry. Yeah, I think that there'll always be a need for someone who knows what the challenges are like for the person who's stuck with the application that the company just bought. So I don't know to answer your question, but I do know that I refuse to adopt some sort of doom and gloom outcome on this, that it's all going to be agents and we're just going to be on UBI and sit around and snack all day. I just don't see it.
Yeah. No, I don't see it either. I think to your earlier comment, it's all about human relationships, and yes, some things will be automated, but new jobs will be created. I think even the service industry is gonna keep on growing, and we're not gonna be in a cave hooked to like a machine that will be out there trying to connect with people. So I like that perspective of the future. Just to wrap up, how can people get in touch with you? How can people learn more about what you're doing if they would like to connect with you?
Sure. LinkedIn, obviously, Corey Kleinbauer. Kleinbauer's a big name, so just Corey Klein, you'll see the rest of it show up. ScaleISV.com is my website. ScaleISV, you can check it out. I'm trying to put some resources up there. I have a vision to create some cohorts and some learning mechanisms for ISV founders, but that's a great place to get a hold of me. I do check out LinkedIn and you'll hear from me if you send me a note. We will talk. I'll gladly talk to any founder for an hour or two if they want to just knock around some ideas. That's kind of a prereq for me anyway before we get into an engagement. So, yeah, I try to be digitally approachable.
Awesome. Awesome. This was a great conversation, Corey. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Have a good one.
Okay.